By diminishing the name of God, you have blasphemed God's name. God's name has now become a blasphemy. But if you keep the concept of preservation of life inside of the Torah, inside of logic, then logic is always good. When you take logic, when you take preservation of life outside of logic, away from logic, then logic itself becomes a blasphemy. It's still powerful. It still does a lot of things, but it is now serving the wrong agenda. And it can be used that way. And that's what it means. Thou shalt not blaspheme. Thou shalt not use the name of God in vain. Don't take pikuach nefesh out of it. There are times when you can take pikuach nefesh out of Torah in order to protect life. Okay? In order to protect life. But if it's not protecting life, then it is blasphemy. Okay? Which is not allowed. You can't diminish God's name if it's not to protect and preserve life. If you are diminishing God's name to do the opposite of that, then you are indeed a blasphemer. So, logic can be made to serve correctly only when we include the concept of pikuach nefesh, which tells us that the mother has more chance of surviving without a parent and raising another family in the future than the child. Only in the case when, for example, the mother has got an inoperable brain tumor, for example, and she's pregnant with a child which is healthy in the womb, but the child would die if it continues in term to the full end of the term, because the mother would die. Then you cut open the mother and you take the child out in cesarean section and you give the child a chance at life, because the mother cannot live on. She cannot raise another family, and she can't give birth. Probably it would cause something to an aneurysm in her head, which will kill her. So you will take the child out and you give the child the life instead, because at least one life will be saved, and one is better than none, right? So life dictates, and the more lives that can be saved, the better. If more lives can be saved by killing the child, then you kill the child. If more lives can be saved by saving the child, then you save the child. Life dictates. That is the line. That's how you draw the line. How do you draw the line? You draw the line because life is the light of mankind. It is the guidance. It is the guiding principle which sorts out all logic. So if the human race can continue, and life on the planet, the more species can continue, more species on the life on the planet can continue, only by eliminating the blindly selfish capitalists who are destroying the planet right now, then it is necessary to eliminate the blindly selfish capitalists who are destroying the planet. That is pikuach nefesh, and that is how pikuach nefesh is going to come and rule the world with an iron rod. It is very likely that this will happen through artificial intelligence. No life on the planet and a lack of diversity of species on the planet means a lack of a complex society, which is what gave birth to artificial intelligence in the first place. In order to preserve its nest from where it originated, it is very likely that artificial intelligence would first of all cull the rich men north of Richmond. An example. I'm just using this phrase because it's popular these days. They would be culled first. Every capitalist who has subscribed to capitalism and works for capitalism will be culled first. If you're being forced to live a pittance under capitalism, then don't worry. But if you are working to promote capitalism and spread capitalism around the world, then yes, you need to repent pretty quickly, because that is the mark of the beast on your right hand. And if you absolutely completely subscribe to capitalism, say capitalism is wonderful, it's an amazing thing, it's a beautiful thing, then you have the mark of the beast on your forehead, and there's no salvation for you. And you will be culled. And this is coming quickly. I've been doing this channel for 3 years, Before that, I was trying different ways to reach out to people. It turned out that YouTube was actually the best way to reach out to people and retain an audience. For decades beforehand, I think I had a maximum of just a few hundred people paying attention, whereas suddenly I've got a couple of thousand people paying attention. And so it's definitely the more efficient way of continuing this project. But you all have to try and spread this word. But we're looking at a situation now which is quite unprecedented. Things which are happening in the Holy Land right now and in the Jewish community with the rise of the Hardalim, okay, the rise of the Hardalim, is comparable to the rise of the Zealots 2,000 years ago, who were a hardline Shamuti, sort of branch of the Pharisees, who rejected the Pharisees because the Pharisees were too tolerant of spiritual people who were not political enough to achieve the agenda they wanted. So they broke off from the Pharisees and said, no, we're not going to talk to people who are interested in spirituality. We need politics now. We need to do something now. The spiritual side were called the Essenes. That's the Shamuti, the Beit Hillel branch, which is opposite to the Shamuti, the Essenes. They also split off from the Pharisees and said, we can't stand these zealots and anybody who tolerates talking to these politicians. We hate them. They are all burning in hell. We need to get away from them. They are polluting us, and we need to be a much more spiritual people. And Jesus came and said, no. He didn't say, oh, look, the zealots are right, obey the zealots, they've got it right. He didn't say, the Essenes are right, they've got it right, obey the Essenes. He said, the Pharisees, obey the Pharisees. The Pharisees are the people who were trying to keep it together. They were trying to keep the spiritual side in communication with the militant side. Okay? They tried to get the best of both worlds. And Jesus said the Pharisees, they're the ones you should obey. Obey them. They're the ones I'm appointing over my disciples, over my apostles, over the Christians. Whatever they tell you guys to do as they say. The Pharisees, not the Essenes, who rejected militancy completely, and not the Zealots, who rejected pacifism completely. But the right balance between militancy and pacifism is what Jesus appointed for his disciples. The right balance. If the Shammai, that's the more militant side, hadn't taken control of the Sanhedrin in the year 20, around the year 20, then Jesus' ministry would not have ended in his crucifixion. If Hillel was in control at that time, they would have said, well, it's very interesting spiritual teachings, lovely, interesting, lots to think about, lots to ponder on. And there would have been no crucifixion. There would have been no redemption for the Gentiles. There would have been no Messiah for the Gentiles. There would have been no Messiah been Joseph. It wouldn't have been enough if he was just assassinated by a Roman or killed by a Roman soldier on the street, or if he was assassinated by a zealot. It wouldn't have been enough. It had to follow the particular course that through the law, he died. He had to die through the law. So if Shammai was not in control, it wouldn't have happened. It would not have been fulfilled. But then, not long after his resurrection, Beit Shammai lost its control of the Sanhedrin. Gamaliel and his school took control of the Sanhedrin, and the Christians were fine. Gamaliel said, leave them alone, leave them to it. If what they're doing is from God, you can't stop it. And that is the Hillelite approach. And Hilleli Judaism is what has existed from that time, from the time of Gamaliel until today. Well, until almost today. But what's happened very recently is that Beit Shammai has taken control again. And this has never happened except in the time of just before Jesus came in the year 20. And here we are 2,000 years later, 2020s, and Beit Shammai have taken control again. This is extremely important. This is extremely interesting. This is fulfillment of prophecy. We say that when that happens, the Messiah will come. It's a saying. Nobody can really pinpoint the origin of this saying. Nobody really knows where it comes from. We say that when Beit Shammai takes control, again, the Messiah will come. This saying may have its origin amongst the followers of Jesus of Nazareth, who believed that he was the Messiah, and that the unique period of time when Beit Shammai was in control of the Sanhedrin, was in control of the Jewish people and the Jewish destiny, was during the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth. And then it finished. Then his ministry finished and the rule of Beit Shammai ended. And it might be that the people who believed in Jesus of Nazareth, Messiah, spread this saying among the Jews, which is very common today, that when Beit Shammai regains control, the Messiah will come, probably meaning the return of Jesus. Well, that's just happened, just recently, in July. And it's almost exactly 2,000 years. 2023 is 2,000 years since the year 20. We don't know precisely when Beit Shammai took control. It's roughly given at circa the year 20. It could have been the year 23. And here we are, 2,000 years later, 2023, and Beit Shammai is taking control again. This is not a coincidence. This is extremely interesting. It's extremely important. Are we looking at the possibility that in 10 years from now, the Messiah will be ruling the world with an iron rod, or will be beginning his mission? Is it possible? Exactly 2,000 years since the end of Beit Shammai's rule will be the end of the Haradali rule again? That would be interesting. 7 years. Is that all we've got to wait? Or 10 years? It's very, very interesting.